This is The Sports Life.
Allen looks right, throws right all the way, going for the home run ball, and it is almost, was it picked? It was intercepted. Nico Reed with a tremendous pick.
Andrews has it, he slipped, but he gets back up with 3, with 2. Andrews a step back 3. He faked it in! He faked it in! Dylan Andrews just faked in a 3, and we think that he has defeated the Ducks.
And he did defeat the Ducks. Josh Lewin on the call as the Bruins give Oregon its first loss of the year. And, of course, Jerry Allen puts a little exclamation point on the Big Ten championship victory, Oregon over Penn State. Will Tiemann here and Dalton Shetler, and welcome into the Sports Life. As we're going to talk some football, we're going to talk some Hall of Fame, and we're going to talk some basketball as well. And the Mike DeCourcy conversation, I think, well, anytime Mike DeCourcy's on the show, it's worth listening.
That's a really fair point. Lot to dive into and dig into as Big Ten basketball really ramped up and going, and a lot of people trying to figure out who's on first in Big Ten basketball. But the College Football Hall of Fame, there were 3 members of the Big Ten Conference represented in the class of 2024. We're going to get to hear from each and every one of them later on here in the show.
Well, you ready for the sounds of the week?
I sure am. Let's go ahead and revisit and circle back to that win for UCLA over Oregon in basketball. UCLA head coach Mick Cronin spent some time with Andy Katz after the game and talked a little bit about the back-and-forth sequence down the stretch. Here's what he had to say.
You know, my big focus is defensively. You got to be really good late in the game. My teams have won. You know, I'm here because of that. All right, I didn't play in the NBA, so we weren't in this game. Kobe gave up an and one. We didn't block out on a free throw. We didn't switch on a high ball screen. We're lucky to get out of here, buddy.
Well, they did get out of there, and you only got to win by 1, right?
That's right.
Just 1.
They find a way. A big win for UCLA over, at the time, what was a number 12 Oregon team. But Oregon certainly has had its fair share of success. If we switch over to football, they're celebrating a Big Ten championship in their first year in the Big Ten Conference. They got the win over Penn State 45-37, and head coach Dan Lanning joined the crew on Big Ten Network after the game, and he was asked about a 4th down in the 4th quarter. I think it was around 9 minutes left to go, and Oregon decided to go for it on a 4th and 2, and it was Dylan Gabriel finding Terrence Ferguson over the middle. Here's Dan Lanning's response when he was asked about the play.
Yeah, Ferg. Yeah, that was good that it worked out. Yeah, I'm glad that worked. I imagine some people would have some things to say if it didn't. So, who cares? I don't care what anybody else thinks. I believe in our players. I believe them in that moment, and what an unbelievable play by Dylan and Ferg in that moment. Just really proud of those guys.
Dan Lanning, the head coach of the Oregon Ducks, heading to the college football playoffs, representing the Big Ten as its football champion this year. And you know, Dalton, the one thing Coach Lanning mentioned there, sometimes you throw out the book, the stats, the analytics, you just feel something and you do it. And when it works, it feels really good.
Oh, absolutely. And that's been a trend in football, hasn't it? Where you're seeing a lot more teams go for it on 4th down. The analytics starting to back up. I don't know if they would have supported that instance, but hey, Dan Lanning's heart and feel definitely outweighs whatever the numbers were in that circumstance. You mentioned the college football playoff, Will. Curt Cignetti, the head Hoosier that we've talked about all season long, the coach of the year for the Indiana Hoosiers, he was talking a little bit about the college football playoff and what he expects as his team heads up the road, just a 200-mile drive to South Bend, Indiana to take on the Fighting Irish at Notre Dame Stadium. He says, look, when you look at the odds of us even making the college football playoff, we already climbed one mountain. Why not do it again and win the whole thing?
The thing I thought about was the odds against us making this playoff at the beginning of the season were probably greater than the odds of us winning the national championship will be. So we've overcome that mountain already.
I don't even think they laid odds on them making the college football playoffs. What a great year Indiana's had, regardless of how the game in South Bend goes.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's something to be pretty proud of if you're an Indiana Hoosier. Something else to be a little bit proud of, even though it didn't go exactly maybe as hoped for or wanted. In Lincoln, Nebraska, the Huskers end up clinching bowl eligibility. They're going to be playing in a bowl game with 6 wins, and Nebraska head football coach Matt Rule was asked about going bowling. And keep in mind, folks, this is the first time since 2016 that the Huskers have the opportunity to go bowling, so it's nothing to sneeze at. Here's what he had to say on the Big Ten Network.
Well, I mean, obviously we want more. We want to compete for championships, but I think this is a great stepping stone on that. And as you said, it was the longest, I think, Power 4 bowl drought, and so I think that means that accomplishing it, getting it knocked out of there is good. And I'm excited. I'm excited for our young players to have a chance to play one more game, go compete, and we're going to fight for what we want.
Matt Rule, the head coach in Nebraska, and Dawn, was interesting about this year and last year. They were at 5 wins pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And a year ago, they didn't get it. This year, they barely got it. So if he can ever fix the back end of his schedule, look out for the Cornhuskers.
I think it's a pretty solid point, as they're going to be playing in the Pinstripe Bowl against Boston College on December 28th. Real quick, let's move over to West Lafayette, Indiana, where Barry Odom, the former UNLV head football coach, has been announced and, matter of fact, introduced as the next head Boilermaker head football coach for the program. Here's what he had to say during his introductory press conference.
You look back at the great football history that Purdue has had in recent. Obviously, with Coach Tiller and the great success and the championships that he had and the transformation and the impact that he had in college football is something that I watched and admired from afar. And then most recently with Coach Brom and the success he had. I've known Coach, and we went against each other 2 different times on the field. You look at the cradle of quarterbacks and the den of defensive ends and the culture that is here and is built that I'm excited to take over and continue to grow to the next level and the next stage.
Barry Odom, the new head football coach at Purdue University. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, because all those things he mentioned are true. But what's missing in Boilermaker football history is that it's not very consistent. There's magic moments and then there's droughts. And I think maybe the big drill here for Coach Odom is to wipe out the droughts. What do you think?
I would completely agree.
Well, when we come back with more of the Sports Live, we're going to talk some Big Ten hoops with Mike DeCourcy right after this.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
Medicaid and CHIP offer free or low-cost health coverage for children and teens. Hospital and doctor visits, prescriptions, shots, and more are covered. That's peace of mind for parents if a child is sick or gets injured. And parents may now be eligible for Medicaid too, even if they've applied in the past. Enrollment is always open. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 1-877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
If you have diabetes, listen up. If you have insurance, you can qualify for a continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends and spend more time in range, significantly lowering your A1C. More importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today. If you use insulin and if you've seen your diabetes care provider within the last 6 months, you may qualify for your own CGM right now. We'll do all the insurance paperwork and deliver your new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost to you. Medicare and most insurances will cover your CGM, so don't wait. Have your insurance handy and call the Aptiva Medical CGM Health Hotline right now.
800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. That's 800-948-6912.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Roxanne Watson is on a mission.
Hello, how are you
you doing today?
She wants more people to register as organ, eye, and tissue donors.
Are you an organ donor?
Yes, I am.
Yay.
My goal is to sign up the most people in the United States.
What drives her? Roxanne's own life was saved through the gift of a heart transplant, made possible by an organ donor.
I decided that day that I was going to devote myself to the cause of organ donation and signing people up and honoring my donor by doing that.
Now she's back to health, and she's a powerful force helping to save lives every day through her work. Imagine what you can make possible by leaving behind the gift of life.
8 people can be helped with the major organs, and up to 50 people can be helped with a little bit of everything. And when you think about it that way, that you could help that many people, it's amazing. It really is.
Learn more and sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Teeman here along with Dalton Shetler. Well, there's no doubt with the college football playoffs going on and some Big Ten teams involved, a lot of football talk. But there's a lot of basketball being played now as we're heading to basically the end of the first third of the season for many of the Big Ten members. And to join us to catch up a little bit on what's happening in Big Ten basketball, for our money, the best college basketball writer in all the land, that's Mike DeCourcy with the Sporting News. And by the way, just so I don't forget, you can catch Mike on the Big Ten Network as well on the weekends in the studio, enlightening us all, which I think Mike at times doesn't take much, but it's always good to be enlightened. How you been, by the way?
I've been very well, Will. How about you?
We've been good, and we're excited about this basketball season. And I thought to break it down, I'd start with this really broad picture. My feeling was heading in that there was a lot of unknowns to this particular group of teams, the 18. And now that we've seen some of this unfold, does this race look pretty wide open to you?
I think very wide open. I believe there are a lot of very fine college basketball teams in the Big Ten, maybe more than any of the coaches that know they'll be on the positive side of that discussion. Guys like Matt Painter and Tom Izzo, many more than they would probably prefer. They know that they have contending teams in the league, and they know it's going to be a rough ride all the way through into March because the Big Ten road environments are as good as there are in college basketball, probably the best of any conference. And then you add in the level of competition you're going to play. I mean, you think about it, I think Penn State was picked 16th, if I remember correctly, right around there, 16th or 17th in the preseason projections by the writers group that does those, organized by my friend Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. And they were projected 16th or 17th, and they went out and beat Purdue by, I'll be frank, I don't remember the final score, but it was whatever Penn State wanted it to be.
Well, Mike, I mean, you talk about how close so much of this competition is, and obviously you've seen a lot of Big Ten basketball and college basketball over the years. And do you remember a race where there wasn't, like, say, a predominant favorite, like last year's Purdue team, where it's been this wide open? And if you have, we trust your intuition, Mike. What are some of the philosophical things, the characteristics, the traits that teams have that win in a race where the competition gulf isn't that extreme?
Well, we have had years, I think back to around the 2012, 2013 season, where we had 3 or 4 terrific teams, and that were pretty clearly, they had to play some very good teams that were in the center of the conference, but I think Michigan that year, Indiana, Michigan State, we had a 3-way tie, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to remember the exact year. We had a 3-way tie for the championship. Maybe it was 2012 that we had a 3-way tie. I think the Spartans were involved in that, and Ohio State. It all kind of runs a little bit together now, but I remember Anthony Buford making that big shot, and I think, and then Michigan and Michigan State and Ohio State, I think, all wound up tied, and the Spartans were I mean, the Wolverines were back in Ann Arbor watching that game because we had it on BTN, their reaction shot to him making that jumper and it becoming a three-way tie for the regular season title. So we've seen that. But I don't think that we've seen the idea of no obvious overpowering favorite. I think we keep looking at Purdue and they keep playing well, and you say, well, that's probably the favorite. But Michigan State continues to evolve. I'm not sure that they're out of reach. I'm still not 100% sure what to make of UCLA, but they just went to Oregon and won. They're going to struggle to score, but they make you struggle to score, maybe more so than they have to, and they win. So I think there are a lot of different teams in this league that can be contenders. And by the end of the year, it could surprise all of us.
Well, Mike, obviously we've had some rosters where we're looking at them and go, who are these guys? Because everybody's just sort of restocked. And I've often thought maybe one of the keys to that group of people is how fast they can get the players to combine and sort of make up a team. And I want to start with Illinois. How do you think they're doing?
Well, I think they're doing very well. It's a challenge, and I do wonder why. I will say, I do wonder why, with the level of newness there is to the Illinois roster, why they're playing quite the schedule that they are. Now, some of that is dictated to them. The Northwestern game on the road dictated to them. Then their other early Big Ten game, Wisconsin, was dictated to them as well. But they played Alabama. They volunteered. They raised their hand, said, let's do that. And Arkansas, they said, okay, we'll do that. And then Tennessee coming up. Yeah, we'll do that too. And then they have their rivalry game against Mizzou. So that's a lot for such a young team to handle. And why did he go in that direction? Well, different coaches have different approaches. And you guys know as well as anybody by following Michigan State as closely as you do, that there are coaches who prefer to find out whatever flaws might exist or whatever chemistry connections need to be reinforced by going into the most difficult games and then coming out and then having some games in between to try to put it all together. And of course, with Illinois, that's only one game before we resume Big Ten. After the stretch I just described, then they play a Chicago State game. That gives them one day to try to reset, and then they go back into the heart of the Big Ten.
Well, we talk about Illinois there. One team that you mentioned a little bit ago was Purdue, and obviously they're the defending champs. But we've seen, you mentioned that they took a licking against Penn State. We've also seen them dominate an Alabama team at home at Mackey. What do you make of Purdue? What is their ceiling? What are the big flaws?
Well, when you have a really good team, you say the ceiling for that team is if everything goes right and they get great matchups and they play to their very best, that they can make the Final Four. They can't win it with this group. It's not there. The level of talent necessary to win a championship, a national championship, is not there. But you can still have a lot of fun on the way. I mean, you can win the Big Ten. You can win the Big Ten tournament. You could get to the Final Four. Those are all really significant accomplishments, and I think this Purdue team is capable of all of those. But they are going to, in the end, because of the injury to Daniel Jacobson, and maybe I'd have a different viewpoint on this after we'd seen him for a month, but his early injury that ended his season, that eliminated any slight possibility that they could go and defend the rim at the level necessary. I don't still think they probably have the talent quite to win the national championship, but there are specific elements of basketball, particularly rim protection, that this team's never going to excel at with this group. It might have with Jacobson, but it won't with this group. So that's the flaw, and they can play around that. They've been able to do that wonderfully by being maybe as proficient on offense as anyone could have expected after losing the two-time National Player of the Year. They've done really well. Trey Kaufman-Renn in the low post, although he's not Zach Edey size, he has great ability to score on the inside. And a lot of teams don't really know how to guard a post guy anymore because there are so few of them. Most big guys now try to play away from the bucket and try to be able to shoot facing the goal because that's what the NBA values. And Trey is able to do those things, but what he's able to do best is post up and score around or over the guy guarding him. And that has absolutely worked to make Purdue among the favorites in the Big Ten.
Mike, I got a quick follow-up. You said Purdue simply just doesn't have the talent to win a national championship, but they've got talent caliber of a Final Four run. Who else is in that tier, and does the Big Ten possess any team that's talented enough to win it all?
Yeah, I think if Illinois were able to make a lot of progress as a team, I think they certainly have that degree of talent. It's pretty rare to be able to do that with so little experience and with so little, not just experience at college basketball, but experience together. It's not common for teams to do that, to be able to come back with essentially no one who was contributing a year ago and then win a title. I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like that. But they have the talent level, certainly, to do that. I think Michigan State would probably be a team that I would say might have that they might have the ability in that department. But it's a pretty select list that you would say have the ability, the talent. That's the part of this that often gets overlooked in preseason prognostications, but never by me, because, I know the history, and I know that no team – I say this a lot, and I hope I'm not boring anybody who's heard it from me before. No team has won the NCAA championship since 1987. That was the last one that did it without a first-round pick on their roster, in their rotation. Last one, 87. That's a long time ago. We're coming up on 40 years since that happened. That was Indiana with Steve Alford and some others. That was the last time. From then on, Danny Manning takes over in 88, and we have an uninterrupted string of teams that have one or more, usually more, who are going to be first-round guys, and that ends up making a difference, usually at the Final Four level.
It's interesting, Mike. For the last couple of years, all we've done is talk about Zach Edey, right? And now all of a sudden, we don't have that marquee player to talk about. I'm sure he's there. Maybe he just hasn't surfaced yet. Is there a star in this league waiting to blossom?
That's a great question. If you think about it to this point, I think you'd have to call Braden Smith a star at this point. He just maybe comes in a different package, a smallish point guard who wasn't super highly rated coming out of high school. But he's clearly one of the best point guards in the country. And I don't want anybody to think that's damning by faint praise, because it's a really poor point guard group in college basketball generally. And I think that if you look at some of the better teams, it's a position of significant deficiency for a lot of them. Duke is a good example. They have great players that you would say, okay, that's their point guard, but he's not a great point guard. There's a lot of that around college basketball, where they have really outstanding players at every other position, but then they're kind of just having to sort of fake it at point guard. That's not the case with Braden Smith. He's been tremendous from day one since he arrived at Purdue. Michigan State has a terrific point guard in Jeremy Fears. I don't know that he'd be quite all first team, all Big Ten level, but I know that Tom sleeps better at night because he's got a guy he can put on the floor and expect the offense to run in the right direction. Beyond Braden, I think Trey, who I mentioned before, would be one. I think Ace Baldwin would be another. He's just had a phenomenal first month or 5 weeks of the season. He's been outstanding. So those would be some of the guys that you'd think of first. I think Derek Queen at Maryland, freshman big guy. He's had a really good start and could end up being that type of player. And if Brooks Barnhizer at Northwestern, he's doing everything but making deep shots. He's not been a poor three-point shooter in his career. The number he's putting up now is not, it's not acceptable for a player of his standard, for a shooter of his standards. I think the last time I looked, he was at he was around 28 or 29%. He's better than that, without a doubt. And when that number gets back up to where he's up at 35 now. He can do better than that, but if he shoots 35% and does everything else he does, and Northwestern is able to have a successful season, I think you're looking at Brooks as being a guy who could be considered an All-American candidate.
Wow. Well, Mike, can you stick around for just a little more basketball talk?
Sure thing.
So we're visiting with Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News. We'll be back with more of Mike's thoughts when we return, but first a break.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little. But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
This is a potter's field. When people can't pay for their funerals, they are buried here. It is a lonely, desolate place, littered with unmarked headstones. No one visits. No one leaves flowers. But it doesn't have to be that way. For as low as $1 a day, you can ensure your family will have the money to pay your funeral expenses. We offer burial insurance plans that pay up to $30,000. Considering the average funeral costs more than $10,000, that's peace of mind for your family. There are no medical exams, your rates won't increase, and your policy cannot be canceled as long as you make your premium payments. Call now to get approved in minutes and ensure your final resting place is more than just a pauper's grave in a potter's field.
800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. That's 800-562-2407. Paid for by Final Expense Direct.
We all make choices about alcohol. Kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, remind me about that party again?
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations, and they want honest answers in everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path, because when you talk, they hear you. Learn more at underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Here's a real-life story that affects 50% of all of us out there. It's called divorce. If you've gotten divorced and now you're struggling to pay your bills and your credit card debts are completely out of control, you need to call this special debt relief hotline right now. We help people with all kinds of money problems caused by different life challenges, a divorce, a job loss, even heavy medical bills. All these life events can sometimes financially stress you out and cause you to get out of control. We help people get their lives back by showing them ways to consolidate and reduce their debt, in some cases for a fraction of what they owe. If your credit card balances are more than $10,000, call us and learn how to reduce your credit card bills and monthly payments now. Here's our number.
Paid for by Debt.com. Call now, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584. That's 800-810-1584.
Welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler, and we're being joined by Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and the Big Ten Network. And we've talked a little bit about the landscape, I guess, for lack of a better term, Mike. But I want to revert back to one team in specific and get your take on them. When Juwan Howard was relieved of his job as the head basketball coach at Michigan, there wasn't much there. They get a new coach. They get a lot of new players. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there looking at a team that through 9 games is 8-1 and won their first 2 Big Ten games. The emergence of Michigan back to a contending position like almost overnight, has that surprised you at all?
Well, yeah. I mean, from the standpoint of where they were a year ago, when I saw the roster, that was put in place by bringing in Vlad Golden, who gives you a great foundation for your team. He was outstanding in 2023 as the center on the Florida Atlantic Final Four team. He can really move. He can block shots. He finishes around the rim. He's a presence in the lane. And then the rest of it, some of the other transfers they brought in have been were fairly promising on paper. I thought Roddy Gale had a chance to be a really good player, especially after that freshman year. He had that breakout game in the Big Ten tournament, and I thought that we'd be seeing something big with him, and he's done a really nice job. The player I didn't really know anything about at all when he came in was Danny Wolf, and he's been an absolute revelation. So versatile, able to play away from the goal as well as just about anybody his size. He's 7 feet 250, but has a really good face-up game, and so they're able. And he moves so well that they're able to play him and Golden together on a consistent basis without being shredded by two quick opponents. And so that's the one I think has been the key to Michigan opening as they have, is Wolf making a very rapid transition from the Ivy League to high major basketball. And they started 2-0 in the league, and it's a absolute great advantage to go into Christmas as one of those teams that has not only won 2 Big Ten games, but won a significant road game by going into Wisconsin and doing it.
It's interesting with 18 teams, Mike. Not one has cracked the AP top 10. Purdue's 11. Does that surprise you that the conference doesn't have anybody up there?
I'm going to tell you the truth, Will. Since 2000, my everyday job has been college basketball. I do a little bit more now in the last 3, 4, 5 years than in terms of other sports. I do more college football, more NFL, a lot more soccer than I did prior to that. But college basketball is still the core of my job. And it's the whole of my jobs with Big Ten Network and Fox Sports. And I never look at the polls. I don't care what they say. I think they're an absolute waste of time. Anybody that gets upset about them, that if they're friends of mine or whatever, I tell them, don't look at them. How can I do my job? I've managed to survive a quarter of a century covering college basketball on a full-time basis for a national publication and never look, because that's how little they mean. You want to look at Ken Pom? I say you can do it because he does a preseason ranking that informs his in-season rankings, and he's a very smart basketball person. So if you want to look at his rankings, you can get a pretty good idea of where the teams are ordered by looking at kenpom.com. The net, it's too early because there's not enough data. They start from 0, and so you need to wait until we have at least till the end of January, early February, before the numbers really start to make sense. But the AP poll, I did it 2 years, and I remember I think it was 1990-91, LaSalle went 28-2 that year, something like that. And Lionel Simmons was on their team. They had like 3 future NBA guys, and no one else voted for them for number 1. And I said, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm screaming into the wilderness. If everybody else can't see that LaSalle is having a phenomenal year just because they're in they were in the Metro Atlantic at that point. If everybody else can't see they're having a great year, I'm wasting my time. So I stopped, and I told them never to call me again, and they haven't.
Well, we'll keep calling you Mike, so you definitely still have some friends here in your pool. I got 2 teams I want to ask you about real quick, Mike, that have been trending maybe in opposite directions. And you alluded to one when we talked with you before this last break, Michigan State, the way that they've improved so far here early this year. But also Indiana, coming in with such a talented front line, took a bit of a black eye down in the Bahamas on their way back. I'm curious what you think of both of these squads.
Well, Indiana, I would say that I thought that my belief from the beginning was that Mike Woodson miscalculated his rotation. When he brought back Trey Galloway as a post-grad player, I think 5th or 6th year, whatever it is, when he brought him back and then didn't start him, to me that's like you can't do that. It doesn't work. First of all, Trey has been the most team-oriented player you could ever ask to have. I mean, he's even a year ago was giving up his own individual success by filling in at point guard, a position he's not really qualified to play at this level. I mean, he could take a minute or two, but he's not a full-time point guard. He's a shooting guard who passes, and I always called him a connector. He facilitates. He often has the pass that leads to the pass that leads to the basket. He's just a great connector. But he's also a senior and a captain and all that. And you can't bench that guy. And they did. And it had hurt them. And since they got pounded a couple of times by Louisville and Gonzaga, they restored him to the starting lineup, and they haven't lost since. Now, they're going to lose games with Trey in the lineup, and he wasn't great in the Minnesota game on Monday night at Assembly Hall, but he did some good things that bring order to their lineup, that makes their rotation make sense. And I think that they've learned a lesson there. They are big, and sometimes that affects them defensively, and they don't always shoot it great, but they can shoot better than they have. And they did shoot well against Minnesota. But I think they needed to learn that lesson in that Louisville game of how to properly build that lineup. And I mean, I'll be frank. I think some of it came from Mike Woodson not being in college for 40 years. He was at IU. He was a great player on some terrific teams. He left and went to the NBA, where he did extraordinarily well as a player and coach for 40 years. But I think you lose a touch sort of with these concepts of hierarchy and senior leadership and all these different kinds of things that you kind of have to have a handle on. And if you've been in college for those 40 years, like, say, Tom has, then you know those things. And you know what works. And you know when it's not working, too. And I think they needed to see that. But I still think that there's a possibility that they can have a successful season. And success for them would be contending for the Big Ten. I think anything short of doing that would be a disappointment. Now, what contending means, first, second, third, fourth, with 18 teams, it could mean as low as sixth, but still having a significant season. I'll be frank, I forget the first team you asked.
Michigan State.
Yeah, I think Michigan State has real possibilities. I've seen them now in every high major game they've played. They're very fortunate that I've been able to see all of those. I saw all their Maui games. You know, I saw the KU game in the season opener, the Champions Classic. So I've been able to, and then obviously in the league as well. They were on our air on Saturday against Nebraska. And I think there's great possibility there. I really do. I think that they have depth. I think they have a point guard, as I mentioned before, in Jeremy Fears, who makes everything make sense on offense. They have multiple point guards so that if Jeremy gets into foul trouble, you turn to Jace Richardson or Holloman, and you're fine, if not better than fine. You got a guy like Jace who can come off the bench and do whatever you want him to do. Hey, I need 20 points. Okay. Hey, I need 5 assists because somebody else is cooking. Okay, I can do that too. What a versatile, valuable player he is. I think he's been a revelation. I still think that for this team to be great, I still think Xavier Booker needs to be a significant contributor, and he was in 2 of their biggest wins, as well as they need the type of big man play that they got in the Nebraska game from Jackson Kohler. I think that Jackson is the most talented pure big they have in terms of like the low post type big, not Xavier, who's more of a perimeter big. But when you're talking about playing around the goal and defending the lane and all of that, Jackson brings something to them that they missed last year when he was hurt so much. And him coming back and playing as well as he did in that Nebraska game gives me real hope for what they can be, without a doubt. Cone Carr, I think, has made a huge advance. He knows how to impact games now. He knows how to make a difference. I think he's getting better and better as a shot blocker. Usually a shot blocker, a help shot blocker is going to have to be, 6'11", 7 feet. But he can do it as a 6'6", 6'7" guy because he's so dynamic. I mean, he twice in that Nebraska game took down shots as a help defender that were you just don't ever see that from a guy his size. But I think you can see a lot more of it from him.
Well, Mike, as a final thought, we're going to be heading into the new year really quick. We have a little blueprint of these 18 teams, what they may or may not be able to do. So what do you think's ahead of us? What do you think January, February, March is going to look like?
Oh, I think it's going to be glorious. And when I mean glorious, I mean because every game just about that you turn on in the Big Ten is going to be a game you're going to want to watch. Just about every one is going to involve two teams that are thinking about, if I win this, I'm this much closer to March. Or if I win this, I'm this much closer to the Big Ten title. I think that's what makes college sports exciting, is real consequence to the competition. And that's what was missing from college football for so long until this year when we had the playoff. And then you had games like Georgia Tech, Georgia, where all the country sports fans were like, this game matters to me. It didn't matter to me a year ago. This meant nothing. Now it really matters because one of these teams is fighting for its playoff survival, or the LSU Auburn game. The same thing. They're playing deep into the night, and everybody's hanging on the result. Well, that's going to be Big Ten basketball to me for this season because there's no obvious champion in like 2024 Purdue. There's not going to be a team that's as difficult to beat as that team. And there's not, and you look at the bottom of the league, they're beyond a couple of teams. I mean, like I said, when Penn State's being predicted like 16 or 17, and then you see their team on the floor, and you're like, really? That's the worst? Well, they're not the worst, but that's how good it is, and how good is it going to be through January, February, and early March?
Well, Mike, I'm excited about it, and I really appreciate your time because I always, if I needed pumped up about Big Ten basketball, I just call you, and I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, Will.
As always, a wonderful chat with Mike DeCourcy, Hall of Fame writer with the Sporting News, and our key analyst out of the studio for the Big Ten Network all basketball season. Well, coming up, we're going to take a look at the College Football Hall of Fame. Got some Big Ten guys going in. Back with more in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
You hear that? That's the sound of uncertainty lurking under your hood. You know the feeling. I know I do. That sudden sinking sensation when you see a check engine light or your car unexpectedly breaks down and you're faced with sky-high repair bills. It's time to shield against unexpected repairs with CarShield. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company and has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau. Don't let the fear of a breakdown keep you up at night. Trust the Shield, Car Shield, and say goodbye to terrifying repair bills and hello to peace of mind. Your plan also comes with 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing, rental car options, and so much more. Don't wait till it's too late. Call Car Shield now before a breakdown. Protect your wallet. Protect your car with Car Shield. Get our best protection ever. Call now. You'll thank me later. 800-965-1292. 800-965-1292. That's 800-965-1292.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Did you receive a call or message that mentioned Social Security and demanded immediate action? Did the caller know your Social Security number or other personal information and tell you that your Social Security number had been used in connection with the crime? Did you feel worried that your Social Security number might be suspended, your bank account might be frozen or seized, or you could be arrested? That is not the Social Security Administration. Social Security will not threaten you, demand your personal information, or instant payment, email or text you pictures or documents, or use a real government official's name to gain your trust. Social Security does not accept payments by gift card, prepaid debit card, internet currency, or by mailing cash. Criminals use these forms of payment because they are hard to trace. Do not be fooled. Hang up. Ignore them. Report this criminal activity to the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General at oig.ssa.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler. And don't forget, auto owners insurance, simple human sense. Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you. Well, what a nice chat with Mike DeCourcy, but now we're going to move to a little college football. And I would say when the class of 24 of the College Football Hall of Fame was inducted, I would say the Big Ten was represented. You had a Spartan, you had a Nittany Lion, and a Wolverine.
And all really top of the line, right? Let's start off with the Wolverine you mentioned. At the press conference, they actually all had a moment to speak a little bit. And Steve Hutchinson, of course, an All-American offensive lineman and a national champion there in Ann Arbor, started off with a question that was directed his way where he was asked, how does somebody from Florida end up in Ann Arbor to even begin this legendary career?
Well, unlike today, we didn't have a million channels to watch football, and Michigan always seemed to be on one of the national channels that when I'd flip on the TV on Saturday afternoon, and always kind of was enamored by that winged helmet. Sometimes schools just call to you, and you hope you make the right decision. And after being there for just about 2 years and winning a national championship, I felt I made the right choice. So you never know how you're going to end up where you end up. You just, like Dan said, just keep working and good things will happen.
Steve, Michigan had a tremendous run last year, claiming its first national title since your team did it in 1997. I know you had an opportunity to be there. Did it feel like a full circle moment for you watching them win?
Yeah, I wish it hadn't been such a long gap in between, but you can't always control that. But yeah, it was fun to see those guys, the excitement and celebrate it. When you're in the moment, you don't really take a breath to realize what you just done. So for us winning it in '97 is kind of more of a blur. You don't get to enjoy it. So stepping back and being on the other side of it, watching those guys do their thing and win it, it was full circle.
And it was full circle for him. And, of course, Lloyd Carr and that group, they were special.
They most certainly were. And speaking of special, here, this College Football Hall of Fame class of 2024, Penn State linebacker Paul Posluszny. He was a two-time All-American. He won the Dick Butkus Award. I mean, the accolades go on and on and on. And he was asked what it means to join kind of the Penn State lineage that are in this Hall of Fame already with this induction this past week.
Definitely honored. It's a very humbling experience to think about some of the other guys that legendary guys that played at Penn State that are part of this group, names that you grew up with idolizing and realizing that now that you get to be closer to that outstanding group of individuals. So it's very, very special.
You were honored in 2006 as an NFF National Scholar Athlete and a Campbell Trophy finalist. What would you say to a high school player who wanted to follow in your footsteps as a top player on the field about the importance of also excelling in the classroom?
It's more important, and especially at this stage in their careers in the game. I guess the importance of academic success, along with the on-field accomplishments is such an important way to distinguish yourself as a student athlete, to show what you're all about, to show what you're capable of. And I have to say that the Campbell Trophy has provided so many, opportunities, relationships, friendships. It's such a special group in honoring an outstanding gentleman. So it's that student athlete combination is obviously so critical.
Interesting thing to bring up. We get lost in this one little fact sometimes that these are universities, and getting a degree is not the worst thing.
Not at all. It's obviously paid off pretty well for Paul as he's in the Hall of Fame. And finally, rounding out the Big Ten representatives for the class of 2024 College Football Hall of Fame, Mark D'Antonio, head coach, of course, for Cincinnati, but really a legendary career in East Lansing with Michigan State. And he was asked what it means when he looks back at his career and flips open a record book and sees that he has more wins than any Spartan head coach in history. Here's what Mark D'Antonio had to say.
Well, first of all, I think these are program awards, so you don't get there without great people, great players, great people working in your administration and training rooms, strength rooms. There's so many different things that go into making a football program. But we took the opportunity to dream big, and it was a step-by-step process. And I'm blessed to be here to represent so many different people.
Coach, one of your mottos at Michigan State was to reach higher. What are some of the key tools that you as a head coach and other head coaches can use to inspire the success of their teams?
I think when we talked about reaching higher, there was just always try and play with great effort and try and do a little bit better. And again, going back to what I said earlier, step-by-step process to get to where you want to go. And as we move through our program, first get to a bowl game, then win a championship, then try and go to the college football playoffs. But at every step, you can take that opportunity to do a little bit better, and that's what we did. And again, I go back to what I said. We tried to dream big in everything we were doing and make it special.
And he did make it special. And in his first press conference, when they introduced him as Michigan State's new head football coach, he talked about championships, right? And then he had this phrase, "Why not us?" And it stuck. Why not us? But I do remember visiting with him one day, and I'm looking at his numbers and knowing how old he is. And I looked at him and I said, the way you're going right now, you can pass Duffy Daugherty. You can become the all-time winningest coach. And he just gave me this Mark D'Antonio sort of stare and said, "Really?" That was it. That was his reaction to it. And so with that, we're going to take a break and head to our parting shots right after this.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little. But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
Everything is expensive right now. Gas, food, you name it. You're spending more, you are making the same or less money. So, what do? You rack up credit card debt. That's what you do. It's not your fault. It's the economy. And guess what? If you rack up too much credit card debt like some of us, you can't pay your bills. Then the credit card companies, as nice as they are, start hounding you for money. Then you start your downward spiral. A smart thing for you to do is to call the Zero Debt. They can help you consolidate all your credit card bills into one affordable payment. Millions of people have done it. It works to make you debt-free. Make this free call right now. It costs you nothing to learn more.
800-298-9093. 800-298-9093. 800-298-9093. That's 800-298-9093.
We are strong, we are resilient, and we will get through this together. But these are stressful times, and it's important to also practice good self-care. It's normal to feel overwhelmed, anxious, or afraid, but there is hope. Reach out to someone, connect with your friends, stay in touch with your community, and know that you are not alone. Learn more at wearebroadcasters.com/hope. Furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
I found hope in the midst of an overwhelming situation.
Alcoholism is a disease that can affect any family. Everyone suffers, but there is help and hope at Al-Anon Family Groups.
Al-Anon gave me my life back. I'm a better father and husband.
Are you in an overwhelming situation because of someone else's drinking? Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Local and virtual meetings are available. Maybe one could work for you. Call 1-866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
I'm Naheem Hines, professional football player. No matter the challenges I face every day in the NFL, my mom is always there for me, despite her own struggles with muscular dystrophy. And MDA is there for my mom. At their 150 care centers across the U.S., MDA is the leading organization in research and care for kids and adults with muscular dystrophy, ALS, and related neuromuscular diseases. Join me and learn more at helpmda.org today. Thank you.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. We'll team in here along with Dalton Shetler. A good show. Our first real look at the Big Ten basketball season, thanks to Mike DeCourcy with the Sporting News and BTN. And I think, Dalton, it's fair to say that the Big Ten was well represented in those who went into the College Football Hall of Fame for this year's class. So we have now worked our way to the parting shots. What do you got?
Well, and by the way, if you missed any of that, make sure you give us a follow at Sports Life Now on Twitter or X. It's again at Sports Life Now. You can listen back to all of what Will just ran through there. But for my parting shot, I wanted to point out how ironic this past conference championship Saturday was in college football, and also kind of highlight the extreme measures of the irony it could have went to. Because in the Power Four, the conferences that you have now, you have the Big 12, you have the SEC, you have the Big 10, and the ACC. Big 10, we know it was newcomer Oregon that becomes the Big 10 champions in their first year there. Arizona State in the Big 12 title game routed Iowa State 45-19. So the Sun Devils in their first year in the Big 12, they're conference champions. In the SEC, Georgia and Texas went to overtime. Now, Georgia won, but Texas was a play away from winning in their first year in the SEC. And over in the ACC, you had a title game between Clemson and SMU. Clemson wins, but SMU only lost by 3. I mean, they were a possession away. We almost had all 4 brand new champions in their first debut year of those Power 4 conferences winning those. Instead, we end up splitting 50-50. But isn't it kind of ironic?
Well, it just tells you where we are. What's the old saying? That's why you play the game. I mean, you really don't know when you get to that level. Well, I'm going to take a moment with my parting shot to salute one of our fellow broadcasters, Ken Pavelka. Now, he is the longtime voice of the Nebraska basketball team. He's in his 38th season. He's a 6-time Nebraska Sportscaster of the Year, and he's been inducted into the Nebraska Broadcasters Hall of Fame. That came in 2019. And the reason why I'm going to give Ken a shout-out, well, last Saturday when Nebraska played at Michigan State, that was his 1,200th game. So, Ken, congratulations. And that's a wrap for this week's show. Hope you enjoyed it. We should also note that you can find us wherever you find your podcasts like SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple. And make sure you check us out and hit subscribe. As always, thanks to the Big Ten Network. The Sports Life is produced by Dalton Shetler and assisted by Owen Cronin. Our executive producer is Wendy Hart. So on behalf of Dalton Shetler, I'm Will Tiemann, and thanks for your time.